Bonjour. Hopefully, my provocative title for this video has attracted maybe a different audience because I'm going to be serious with this one. And I've got a serious shirt on without cartoons in it on the front because I'd really like to discuss why anyone would consider turning every traditional comic character gay is a win for equality. It's been annoying me for a while. What has set me off is it's only one issue from Marvel, and I know it's an alternative timeline and all the silly multiverse stuff they're doing as well so they can get away with whatever they want. Gay Spider-Man. Yeah, take a look. He's got big eyes, look, and he's got ruffled sleeves. Oh my God, isn't this brilliant? Is the story any good? I don't know, it isn't out yet. It's already up there. It's already been put on the stage to be ridiculed. To be ridiculed by people that won't read the comic, and it is written for an audience that won't buy the comic, but that will go on Twitbook and Instagoggle and not even and say it's a victory. This isn't moving anything forward at all for equality, diversity. I don't know why it's comics, TV, films that everything there is trying to be converted, particularly comics, which I want to concentrate on. I won't drift off into other things. Comics is the thing I've loved all my life. All my life. Every generation that comes along is going to challenge tradition. What has gone before? No, we want better. We're going to change it. In the 60s, when Marvel and DC were doing whatever they were doing, and we all know what they were doing, very standard, aimed at 12-year-old boys. These comics went on newsstands. You'd find them in every store in America. They was used as ballast, these American comics, on ships coming over to the UK and Europe, maybe wider in Europe, but particularly the UK, because obviously English language. And it was in news, and it was everywhere. It was everywhere. And these Superman, Batman, and Justice League of America, and Spider-Man, Fantastic Hulk, these comics were sold in the hundreds of thousands, hundreds and hundreds of thousands, aimed at 12-year-old boys in the 60s and 70s. A generation of writers come along in the 80s. I'm going to say Frank Miller and Alan Moore, that challenged the tradition. They loved the medium. They loved comics. They loved the characters, and they challenged it with Dark Knight and Watchmen. And I'm sorry, because this isn't... I'm being quick with this bit because this isn't the main point of what I'm trying to make. They succeeded in challenging the preconceptions of what we wanted to... And they still sold. They sold millions. I think Dark Knight and Watchmen went on to become New York Times bestsellers list, whatever that list is on the books, with proper books. Right. Gay Spider-Man has set me off. Previous to this, we've had to make Superman's son bisexual. Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy, which was kind of... It was all right. It was kind of there, but you know, a decent writer will go there, but it needs a story. You cannot just make a previous character not set up to be gay, and suddenly you're telling an interesting story. Because believe it or not, boy, girl, old, young, want to pick up that little pamphlet of 4-colour pictures and be entertained for 20 minutes with a story. And that is what's being forgotten. I don't know why. When your best idea, when the best idea you can take to an editor is let's make him, her gay, it should be okay. Okay, we've got to move forward. Right, let's challenge what's gone before. And we've got to everything, and I'm not against it. But give me a good. So, what is the story? Because this is where it's going wrong, and this is what is making me angry. And I'm going to tell you why it's making me angry. I wrote comic stories back in the day in England, war stories. I had about 15 of them published, and it took me a while to get the first one published. You've got to be, back in those days, you had to be thick-skinned and persevere to get noticed. There was almost like a ladder to climb. And half of that ladder is respect to the writers that have earned the right to be at the top. They've earned it. They've delivered their stories on a deadline. They have entertained an audience. The comic has sold. And they've been invited back to do more. Yeah? And I know I'm getting a bit animated, a bit angry, because it is winding me up a bit, because it seems as if, and I don't know, I'm not privy to the inner workings of Marvel and DC, and I am going to aim this at those two, the supposed top two. They're not anymore. What a shame, because their comics aren't selling. Manga is entertaining a wider audience under any measurement of comic book sales. Manga is destroying it in North America. I don't know about the UK. I don't know if anyone's even bothered in the UK. And I'm going to use my experience, and it was in the late mid 90s, and I've got the letters here from the editor, and I'm going to use these to illustrate the hard work of creating a story from the idea and making it work for an audience. Not for 3 or 4 people. I could write stories all day long that would entertain 3 or 4 people. These companies used to be publishers. Supposedly they still are. The company I worked for was DC Thompson. Don't confuse it with the US one, with the Batman and all that. Based in Scotland. They started off in 1886 and they are still publishing now. You can go on their website now. You can accuse them of being very traditional. They publish newspapers, still publish magazines. And the comic that I wrote for in the mid-90s that was started in the late 60s, telling World War II stories, again, they knew their audience, and guess who? Yes, it was 12-year-old boys, probably 12 to 16, 18, whatever demographic you want to screw your face up at. But they sold mega. They was in every newsagent. When you went on holiday, they was just in these spinning racks in the UK, and they had a global audience. They were translated into tons of languages. The armed forces was into them. Apparently, that's anecdotal. I haven't got no evidence to back that up. But the comic is still going now. So they start off publishing in 1961, and they're still publishing 61 years later. A bit like Marvel and DC with all their characters, the core I'm talking about. Late 50s, early 60s. I know Batman, Superman, which are the ultimates in superhero stuff, go on from there. But look at the state of them now. Not Batman, I'll give you that, and Spider-Man, right, for Marvel. The rest of it, look at where they are, but also look at the sales. What was Batman selling in 1961? What was Spider-Man selling in whatever year we can't think, it was 64, was it? What? And look at the sales now. They are in the toilet. They're struggling because of, let's make everyone gay. Okay. But can you tell a story? No? Oh, well, let's just make them all gay then. Or the other one, which I'm not going to go there today. Let's make them another race. Let's make them another religion. Why not? But can you tell a story? So what? So what? Because what they're doing, what they're allowing, and I'm going to, hopefully, I want people to come at me and comment and say, if you're gay, you loved bisexual Superman's son and whatever all the other dross is, because it is such bad storytelling, agenda driven, not story driven. And I'm going to nail down into what it used to take to get your story published. What it used to take, and you go at the editor with your idea, and he would never, or she would never turn around and say, that is the perfect story, I'm going to publish that straight away and give it to my best artist. No way. No way. That's the intro to this video. Now, if you're not prepared for me to have some strong views about, not homophobic views, the creativity of these people, the creative bankruptcy of these people that have got one idea. What's your best idea? You over there. Oh, should we make Thor black? Wow. Take a look at it. What's your idea over there? Oh, should we make Spider-Man gay? Oh, yeah. What's he going to do different? What is a gay Spider-Man going to do without getting rude? I'm going to allow myself this one little naughty bit. What is a gay Spider-Man going to do different from a heterosexual? I'm not going to talk about squirting web fluid. Right, it's going to stop there. I'm going to stay serious. What are these characters going to do any different? Any different? But what's going wrong is there's no story. The story is about them being gay or trans or this and that and the other. No. And people don't like it. People don't like it. And I'm sure if I was gay, I don't think I'd be satisfied. I don't think I'd be happy. No one is presenting anything. With all these opportunities now, which I agree with, nothing is being presented of any worth. So let's get into it. Here we go. It just doesn't sell, and it doesn't make a good story. So there used to be a magazine called Comics International in the UK. Don't know if it had any distribution in the US, and it used to just be everything Comics Monthly. I don't know whether Wizard was out then, but basically your monthly mag to show you what was out and about if you was just into the whole thing, reviewing different issues of different stuff. And an advert in that had a writer's workshop, little advert in the back, writer's workshop. So I thought, yeah, because I wanted to be a comic artist when I was a kid. So I thought, let's do this, maybe. One of the first things the guy said, who was running the classes, forget your Spider-Man and your X-Men and your Batman stories, because no one is going to look. No one at DC and Marvel, and this is late 80s, early 90s, he said, and deservedly so, but it was a wake-up call for everyone there, because everyone had their everyone who loves comics, and I still do, had their X-Men story, their Batman story, the bestest ever one. And he went, forget it, because the guys, I'm going to say guys, because I don't remember many women writing the top of the shop story. But anyway, the people writing the stories at the top of the shop for Marvel and DC had earned it. They had grafted. They weren't just plucked out of Twitter book because of their activism. They had worked at small stuff, maybe short stuff, whatever it is in time, and now you're writing Batman. one big thing at the time was in England, you got to write for the comic I've already mentioned, Commando, maybe, or other small press stuff. And then you moved on to a comic called 2000 AD, where Judge Dredd came from, etc., etc. And then you got plucked. At the time, there was a big talent exodus to the US because guys like Dave Gibbons that started off writing through, that may have been DC Thompson actually, like I mentioned before, the publisher I worked for. It was a South African comic, of all things, and you may know all this, so apologies. Then he works for 2000 AD on a good few, and then he gets his dream job. I think it was writing Green Lantern, and he'd been a Green Lantern fan. Oh, sorry, not writing, drawing Green Lantern. Dream job. I think I can remember at the time, like, he just over the moon. Love it. Love it. But he'd earned it. He'd proved himself, like I say, deadlines, delivering, professional. And I'm going to use my publishing. It is small time, don't get me wrong. I didn't get to write Batman, but there used to be a process of professionalism and an editorial oversight on these stories. It wasn't just what I'm going to do is use my journey, my little journey, to illustrate why now just making Spider-Man gay or Superman's son bisexual or having a group of non-binary characters in a comic that doesn't even get published. And amongst that, all of the dross, the only idea that these creatively bankrupt so-called storytellers can give us, and none of it is selling, is let's make them gay. Why don't we make her gay? Why don't we make him gay? It just doesn't sell. And it doesn't sell because you're not even telling a story. You are activists that may have written a couple of bits and bobs here and there, and you're in the right place at the right time, and your right colour and the right gender and of the right disposition. But what happened to telling a story? What happened? So I'm going to start in 1993. Here we go. With DC Thompson. I'd sent them 3 stories. Yeah. Typed. Pre-internet. This is glorious. Thank you for contacting us with your 3 ideas. Unfortunately, we can't make any use of these because the themes are all too familiar and have been used by us before. We now need material which is that bit different and that has become very difficult to attain. Now, this is a war comic that has published stories. This is dated 1993. So they've been publishing for 32 years and they're already telling me it's difficult to attain. Take that how you would. But 32 years, after 32 years of publishing, there's straight away my first rejection letter from 3 stories all at once. It's very difficult to attain. But please do try again if you feel you can get closer to the target. But they advised me to only work on one idea at a time. Good advice. That's October, 2 months later. Thank you for contacting us again. You're certainly persevering and I applaud your patience, plus the fact you're getting closer every time. But I'm afraid the greatest criticism centres on the fact that the character gets away with far too much and succeeds too easily. Already this editor, who was a marvellous man, a marvellous, generous editor, just a great guy, human being, who kind of, I felt at the time, took me under his wing. I just kept going. And each time he'd come back at me with constructive criticism after 3 months. No giving me a job, no putting my hand up saying, what if we make one of your sergeant majors in your next war story gay? Because do you know what he would have said? Where's the story? He probably would have also said, no one's interested. And when I say no one, I mean the target audience. The target audience. They're not aiming it at a politically sophisticated, very well-educated adult audience. It's a little A5 size war comic. Tell a story. They are a publisher. And his job was to get the best stories out of the best writers. Who knew? And I'm pretty sure this used to be the way. I'm pretty sure that was Stan Lee's mantra at Marvel, and I wasn't a big DC fan. Put my hand up to that. So I don't know who was. I'm trying to think. No, don't let me ramble on because I won't know who Stan Lee's equivalent was at DC. But nevertheless, you didn't get the best out of all these characters by just saying, "Oh, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. Heterosexual is so boring." I'll move on. Thank you for trying out. This is 6 months later now. I started in October, March next year. 1994. Take a look at that in a typed out letter. Thank you for trying out another idea for us. Although I must say straight away he hasn't worked. First of all, the men involved in such a mission. Now he's using logic now. He's using logic. So even though these are boys' own war stories that are kind of not realistic, they're not documentary style, do you see what I mean about using this as a guide to how decent editors working for decent publishers trying to publish the best stories at their target audience to earn a profit were working? But I still went on. And you can read the rest of that. Again, 2 weeks later, thank you for taking the time to work out another synopsis, which we read. Unfortunately, hasn't worked. And what you read here is everyone's got jobs to do. Now, I know that kind of doesn't sound very arty of me, very artistic of me, but to create a decent story, it cannot be activism. It cannot be your political viewpoint. Because when I did have a story involving a political viewpoint, which I still, and it was about the Warsaw Ghettos. I'm writing for a war comic, and I'd had this idea about these two brothers fighting their way out of the Warsaw Ghettos, and straight away it's too political. Straight away he said we can't. I had ideas with too much violence in it, and you're looking at all these letters now. This one, August 1994. This is after I'd had one of my stories published, and it just goes to show you that he's saying in this one, the main snag is that the story is too brutal and adult for us. We can't show such material to our readers in graphic detail. But if we do tone down or remove the awkward incidents, we don't have a strong enough storyline anymore. So, don't you think as a writer, this is also a learning curve for me? This is doing me a favour. This is an editor, a professional editor with experience. Not someone just saying, yeah, this is great. Which I do believe is what's going on now at those two big. This is why I want to get into the nitty gritty of this actual editorial comment of how to craft a story to entertain the biggest audience. Who wants to entertain that? You might as well stand up on your soapbox on a street corner. If you want to talk to a few friends and randomers. No, that is why these sales are in the ditch with those two publishing houses in America. Why and when it happened, I don't know. When they lost, this is what's called editorial oversight. This is what's called whatever it is, it will involve the word editorial. I'm sorry. and this is the bit and this is the bit that makes me angry, because it took me a lot of time and hard work and graft, and I'm proud of the stories I had published. And then you look at Dross, you look at you look at a Miles Morales Thor. Look at him. You look at a gay Spider-Man. You look at a bisexual Superman, and the sales tank. Look at the sales. Instead of concentrating on giving the audience that had been there for decades. What was wrong with them then? Have they been idiots? Have they been idiots for buying those comics for decades because this is the best you can do? Just take a look. Take a look at what they deliver. Now we're into 1995. Many thanks for your letter and close synopsis. You've put a lot of work into this theme, but I'm afraid it hasn't worked out. The ironic thing is, it's your own enthusiasm and hard graft which has caused the problems. You have an overcomplicated plot, and it has become too hard to swallow and follow. So, but I can't remember how I felt when I got that. I can't remember how I felt. But he's saying, calm down, lad. Like, you don't have to work that hard to tell a good story within the constraints of this 63-page A5 comic of 2 or 3 panels a page. Now, a year later. So by now, I'm getting stories published. I'm aiming at the ones that I didn't. I've probably had maybe half a dozen. In between this half a dozen being published, you kind of, especially after your first one, I thought, oh yeah, anything I'll knock out. No way. No way. One story. But it just had to fit, and I hope what this is doing, and I hope I'm not rambling too much, but I hope this is illustrating is the hard work that storytellers in every medium, I'm concentrating on comics because this is comic writing, and I just can't understand why the Marvel and DC continue to do this, to do what they're doing at the moment. I just don't know what they see in it. It may be creatively bankrupt editors that don't know what they're doing. I don't know. I haven't researched it. But we all clearly know, do the research on sales, see what the sales were 10 years ago, Marvel and DC, a few titles, and see what they're doing now. And ask yourself, a comic selling 50,000 copies worldwide, would you have bothered making a film about it? Would you have let's do the first film. Ooh, we've got the rights to all these films. Iron Man, yeah. No, but yeah, he's a heterosexual white guy. Should we make it a teenage black girl? I don't know if she's gay or not. You know it's coming. Why? Why? It might prove me wrong. It might be a good story. But why not tell that story over there and leave Tony Stark alone? Just carry on with Tony Stark. If Iron Man is selling comics, why has it got to be a replacement? That, again, isn't equality. It just isn't. That would not cheer me up. If every Marvel and DC superhero was turned into a podgy, middle-aged, heterosexual white man, do you think that would cheer me up? I do not want to see Blade as a white, heterosexual... I know he wasn't gay, but bear with me. I just don't want to see him as me. I can just enjoy the stories, enjoy the film, whatever it is you're doing. I don't really... Imagine everything I want to see me in it. Really? Wouldn't be a very, very good Black Widow, would it? Actually, yes. I'm going to write a note about no. I said I'd be serious with this one. Now, here's another synopsis. 1996, called Driver. 1996, take a look. Unless you think I've got an old typewriter and I've typed all this out to tell you I've been ahead of the game. And the editor says, you'll remember that I had reservations about this one, and I'm afraid that the end result hasn't convinced me that it will work. It's too much a theme for a film with its moving action and constantly changing camera angles. A lot of the story will look so much flatter and less exciting on our pages without the benefit of varied lighting and suitable background music. Now, read on more if you want, because it destroys it more. And I was really happy with this one. But listen to the man telling me that it just won't work in a few comic black and white pages. The audience won't be happy. He's thinking about them, not himself, not an agenda driven. No, actually, I do know he wasn't gay, he was married. But these are all my points. These are all my points that I'm hoping that people are listening to. And I do apologise that I'm kind of getting a bit irate. It's because if you have ploughed in work and you did think you was doing it to climb a ladder, it's soul destroying. And I'm not saying that I've wanted to, well, I did want to work for Marvel and DC, but I mean recently. I'm not saying that they've shut the door on my face to let in this lot into Marvel. I'd love to write for Marvel if I thought I'd prove myself. But this is why I'm alright. I can't, I'm not apologising for it. And I hope I'm illustrating, and I do want people to comment on this. I would love to have a discussion about this. I would love to know if any gay, if there's a gay audience out there that has really enjoyed seeing a previously heterosexual comic character turned gay. Robin, who's been Red Robin, Robin 2, 3, I don't know. Like I say, I'm not much of a DC fan, but the recent, you know, they've done crossovers with Marvel where he got it on with some of the birds over there, and he's got it on with birds in the DC. Why do that? Really? That's going to excite the previous audience for the past 20, 30 years. To see him now suddenly, he's been doing that all this time, and you've been collecting these comics month after month, and now, oh, look what we've done. No, it's unnecessary. It's unnecessary. Another one called The Surgeon. I can't remember this one. The theme, again, is in many ways too adult for us, where our heroes will have to shoot at and kill innocent policemen, etc. So I'm getting too political. It even says for the common good. Bit too much like Tom Clancy's book. Again, he's bringing me back to the target audience. And this is a publisher still publishing this comic in numbers. 60 years later from when they started. And I've got stories published by them. But I can't just throw anything at them and hoping that it will stick. And I will say that when you read some, not all of the two big one, all the stories, I'm saying most. When you read the dross, when they bring out an X-Men limited series going to a ball, and the biggest thing, just look, when the biggest thing they can talk about is what clothes they're wearing to the ball. Look what they've done to them. Look what they've done to them. And you think, I wonder how many copies of Jim Lee's X-Men sold back in the 90s. And it was in the millions. I don't know, it was the variant covers and all that. But I wonder how much of this X-Men's balls. X-Men balls? Done another one here. Politico, I called it. Politico. You can see what I'm doing. I'm finding my feet and I'm thinking, yeah, I can tell. But what this guy is saying is no. We'd like the German invasion. The Russians do not attack, lack of cohesion. But he accepted the story. So I'm going to end this on a couple of nice little light notes. Comics International that I mentioned at the beginning. And the editor sent me this. I hadn't seen it. Because Commando never got
put in the back. It was always mostly, I mean, it's got UK titles here, which I'll let you take a look at, that I was really proud of. And there was a fanzine. It was a glorious fanzine, a self-published one that was going into Commando Comics. And a big shout out to them, because before they had to cancel themselves because of money, and it was costing so much to print, and it was back in those days. But just a big shout out because they wanted to interview me, and look what they said about one of my stories. And this is why I was very, very proud of what I did. It wasn't on the scale of Marvel and DC or Dark Horse or Image, but at the time, these guys, I wish I could dig in and research deeper, but these guys were selling in numbers globally. Not just to specialty comic shops, newsagents, globally, everywhere, newsstands, everywhere. So whether that stacks up with the numbers that just direct to comic shops McFarlane Spider-Man was selling into, or Jim Lee's X-Men, and I love all that. Don't get me wrong, I love all that. But don't tell me that the way forward, or no, do you know what? I'm going to revise that comment. Please tell me what logic there is. And I want a discussion, and I know I've been animated in this. It's only because I care. But you please inform me how this new agenda-driven comic storytelling format is going to work. It isn't at the moment. But tell me that, yeah, it's going to be a rough start and then it's going to get going. And we are going to want to see more gender-swapped, previously established superheroes selling in the numbers that they were before this weak storytelling crept in, agenda-driven, started ruining it for everyone. But when I say everyone, I mean everyone that used to buy them. I haven't pointed it out, but I'm sure people who've been on my channel before have seen it. Oh, I ain't going to go on. I won't go there. Not yet. But again, I will reiterate, I would love for people to comment, come at me, and let's discuss. Let's discuss why you're enjoying it. You might be enjoying it, but the storytelling is shocking. There is nothing there. There is not a thing. There is not a character arc. There is no intention and obstacle in any one of those stories unless you can prove me wrong, because I haven't read them all. You can't get through them all. You just can't get through them all. So if you want to explain to me why you're enjoying them, and if it's just because you're seeing yourself there, I never saw myself in Superman's journey or Batman's journey. Really, you can see. Does it? Surely we all use a little bit of our imagination to self-insert ourselves. So, other than that, I hope this provokes a discussion. That's what I really hope. Provokes a discussion, so that the people that they think they've got an audience for, no, we can't accept it. We can't. So, hope you've enjoyed. Adios.